And welcome to Channel 51 News for Friday, August the 29th. This will be the last news of the season. How about that? When we return on Monday, it will be spring, thankfully. Goodness me, it has been a cold, wet and miserable winter here in New South Wales and pretty much everywhere around the country. So looking forward to that coming on. Now, there is, of course, a fair bit to get through today and the big rally scheduled for August 31, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But the big news, of course, this week has all been about Des Freeman, and according to The Age, police have arrested his wife, Des Freeman's wife, Marley, along with a 15-year-old boy, as the search gets on to the fourth day. So let's give you some updates of what we know. 2 people have been arrested as the hunt for the alleged cop killer. And the term that's upsetting a lot of people who are following this, the self-proclaimed sovereign citizen, Des Freeman. And I will be playing a clip shortly from Dale Holmes, who also uses the term sovereign citizen. And the reason that is it's a generic term that's being used to frame the narrative. And that's the important part here. It's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about bringing you information from the mainstream. The point of the mainstream there is what the masses are thinking and are being told. You don't have to agree with them, but the point is what you want to be able to do is understand where we all are at the exact same time to see how we're going to get out of this. So the police confirmed the arrests on Friday morning as the massive manhunt for Freeman is now in its 4th day. Fugitive squad detectives along with special ops group members attended an address at about 8:40 p.m. Thursday evening. A 42-year-old woman and a 15-year-old boy were safely arrested at the address. They were taken into custody. The pair were interviewed and released pending further inquiries. Extensive searches remain ongoing for the offender, known officially as Desmond Philby, also known as Desmond Freeman, whose location still remains unknown. The Age is reporting the 42-year-old woman arrested is Freeman's wife, and the house is owned by a friend of hers. On Tuesday night, some 12 hours after the shooting, Freeman voluntarily attended a police station after police had been unable to find her and her children. The Australian newspaper published a photo from Thursday night reportedly of Miss Freeman standing barefoot on the road, talking to police and holding a toddler. Now, I'm going to play you this clip now. It's from a lot larger video that Dale Holmes put together only about 24 or 36 hours ago. Here he is on that 35-minute clip. We've cut a good 7 minutes. It's long, but it's well worth it. The most important thing that Dale will tell you is at the end of the day, after everything, you've got to laugh at the Armageddon because it upsets them. And the point is that it seems like the establishment is in a whole lot of bother, a lot of speculation about what's going on. Could this have been a psyop gone wrong? Let's play the clip now from Dale.
But like the real targeting here too, and it does say that the establishment is quite terrified, and it looks like they're trying to lock everything down in place, so there is no resistance either, like legally. You're obviously going to get people within certain groups that are in common law groups and stuff like that that are going to feel like they're targeted and they're scared now that they're under attack. Could they take this person out? But the other one I want to, and I'm not saying this guy is an asset, isn't, but this is a very, very common theme. The person, what Ole always says is you look for media, you look for military, and you look for police ties, and sometimes academia, right? If they've got any connections in with these things, is a lot of the times they can even be a dissociative asset, an asset, or actually a working agent within these groups. So he was on a current affair in 2018, and it was one of these bullshit, the current affair. Like, actually, I had a friend from England. He moved over to Australia, and I said, what did you like about Australia the most? And he said, a current affair. He said this was like the funniest fucking show that he couldn't believe that it was a TV show, and it was basically always the noisy neighbor or how much chicken is really in your chicken nuggets, like these bullshit stories. But anyway, he was involved in one of these neighbor dispute ones, and I'm telling you, looking at these over and over and over again for decades, this is an absolutely common theme in which you will see the target person or the killer or the patsy, whatever you want to call them, has appeared on like a game show, a current affair, something like that. They were a witness at another event, and obviously this person was locked up in the protest in 2022, and a picture was taken of him. It just seems very much like he was an asset, even if he was unknowing. But like, I think the Mike Bush one, just the fact that they've brought over the guy that oversaw the Christchurch massacre and now is the chief commissioner in fucking Victoria. What? Are you are you kidding me? And then like on the same day too, then Albo. I don't know if people remember that the synagogue attack, was it like at the start of the year? And then they're all having to go at Albo saying that, you know, he wouldn't call it a terrorist attack. And then it took one tweet from Bibi Netanyahu saying that Albanese is a disgrace. We need to declare this a terrorist attack. Meanwhile, they didn't even know who did it at this point, or a motive, but they're saying that this is terrorism. So this is coming from both sides, right, too, because they're showing the right-wing terrorists and the left-wing terrorists. Anyway, so now he said that with intelligence from ASIO that Iran was behind the synagogue attack. Like, Iran gives a fuck in Melbourne to burn a fucking front door in Melbourne. Like, what a fucking joke. What an absolute joke. And the other thing was, like, even like Biden and them were talking about too, that they were saying the biggest threat to national security was domestic terrorism. It's been a lead up thing for a long time. So I'd just say, like, don't be scared about any of this. I think they are going to pick off a couple of certain influences or people well known within that sort of common law community or anything like that. That's going to be their real target. And then ultimately, what I've been saying for a long time too is the big trigger is going to be something happen in the Middle East, but probably an attack on the Dome of the Rock. And I still think this is going to be part of like the sleeper cells. And if you've thought about it, if you have a massive Muslim coordinated Muslim terror attack, not that I'll believe it's real, but like a fifth column infiltration into the West in multiple of these countries, and I don't think it'll go off as it's actually planned. You're going to have massive internal division, and it comes down to people's own belief system, how they see themselves, their own ideology, their religion, and creation itself. So it's actually, we're going through like another big collective awakening experience. And what we saw through the COVID period was there was actually uniting of all these different groups, and all the one uniting thing was, let's all like be sovereign. We are like sovereign within our own body. No one's putting anything into our own body. And it was a very clear and obvious stance for people to make, to choose one side or the other. But the next one is far more difficult now, because what they're really going after, and this is why I actually think this is coming from a divine place, this orchestration. I think it's been implemented by sinister forces, but ultimately it's coming from a divine place, because it's a big awakening process that's happening, and it's challenging people's own dogma. Again, I think that there's going to be groups that are trying to do that for their own purposes, and that's like everything within the hologram. Everything's death and rebirth, and I see this as part of the Abrahamic religions, the destruction of the Abrahamic religions, for something else to come through. So both dark and light sides actually want to play out the death and rebirth, because the death and rebirth is naturally within the cycle. So it's about, can you manipulate it or can you ride through it? But ultimately, I think what's going to happen is people's belief systems are going to be challenged. I don't know what he's like, because people are saying like he was a bit mentally unwell. He had a lot of pressure on him. He knew they were coming after him. And I'll also say that too, because say he wasn't actually an intentional asset for the intelligence agencies, they can monitor and profile every single one of these people within the community. They could see maybe he's a bit of a leader. He's got these very strong beliefs. He's not going to back down. So if we go there and overpower him with guns, this is someone that is actually going to fight back, and ultimately who's behind that operation wants fight back. They want shot to be fired, because it works in their agenda much better than if they just went there and arrested him. This works so much better for them, the fact that he's shot and possibly killed someone. And there's so many ways that can easily be done. And the main way that you can mind control someone, even like technologically, is if you can change their vibration and state of being. And I've mentioned this before with Operation Crimson Mist that they did in Rwanda, in which they were flying Black Hawk helicopters over, and they were beaming frequencies onto the crowd. And the crowd was already enraged because of CIA operatives on the ground, that it enraged the tribes and all this kind of stuff. Stuff like they did in Vietnam with the Phoenix program and stuff like that too, that they would like rape and slaughter some of these Viet Cong tribes and stuff like that. And the whole point was to like agitate them, and then you can beam frequency onto them, and the frequency will only heighten the natural base frequency that's already there. So if you're coming in with a frequency of love, or if this person was at a certain vibration that wasn't in fear, then you actually can't be affected by that level of mind control. There's no energetic sync with that technology. So that's why it's always good. He actually, the more serious the world gets, you need to laugh at it. You need to actually, like, you can't be serious all the time. You need to, like, constantly be laughing and making jokes and having fun. Like, even like if we're on like fully in Armageddon, you should still be cracking jokes. I think that's massive key, and just because of the vibrational part.
Apocalyptic images have emerged from a violent clash between police and protesters in a neighbouring country to Australia. The Smart Traveller website currently advises exercise a high degree of caution in Indonesia overall due to security risks. Higher levels apply in some areas. The US Embassy in Indonesia has issued a specific warning for those in the area. Almost 5,000 policemen were stationed in the city of Jakarta in Indonesia on Thursday in frightening scenes, marching towards them, exploding fireworks with thousands of students and workers with one goal in mind, on hand to show their frustration with lavish allowances being given to politicians amid poor conditions for the working class. They began the clashes by exploding Molotov cocktails on the wall of police. They were caught in the middle of the protesters and the corrupt elites who are being handed more than US $3,000 or 4,600 Australian to spend on housing every month. It's more than 10 times the minimum wage in Jakarta, but they continued to hurl explosives at the line. Meantime, new information is being revealed in the New York Post that the Minneapolis school shooter, Robin Westman, confessed he was tired of being trans. I wish I never brainwashed myself. Isn't that something? Now, if this turns out to be true, and we're learning, courtesy of Billboard Chris, there are more children who have been trans to detrans, and it's a taboo that you're not allowed to talk about either. This is one of those situations. So whilst children today, young people looking for labels for everything as an excuse or whatever, a justification, maybe to be a victim, that changing one's identity to perhaps improve one's own life didn't exactly work out, and these tragedies keep going. Well, yesterday I was able to interview Dr. Sunil Dand, and that interview played in full last night on Channel 51 and other destinations as well. And I'm going to play part of it here because in it he makes specific reference to psychiatric drugs. Take a look.
I've seen the same things about the shooting patterns in the United States, and this hits home because some of these shootings have happened close to where I live. And don't also rule out the role of medications, because psychiatric medications are dished out like candy to youngsters in the United States. It's awful. And many of these are mind-altering as well.
That is such an interesting point, because one of the commentators mentioned today in just an off-the-cuff remark said a generation fed SSRIs. If your mind, your mood doesn't change, do you become more depressed because the medication to treat said depression and anxiety, let's say, hasn't kicked in or hasn't worked, and that's the reason why the ideation may form? I feel like there's a missing link in this understanding.
Yeah, that has actually been documented. In some people who take medication, symptoms can actually get worse. These are bona fide mind-altering drugs, and you're giving them to young people too, whose brains are still developing. It's awful. There's those, and also even Adderall, which is being crazily prescribed in the United States. So they're getting youngsters hooked on drugs earlier and earlier. It's a tragic situation. This goes back to what I was saying. This is truly unprecedented, what is happening right now. Never happened before, where we have a generation of young people who are not only so metabolically sick, but they're also medicated to the hilt. Sadly, I believe it's going to get a lot worse over the next 10 to 20 years. I'm not sure we can reverse this very quickly.
Well, meanwhile, not 12 hours later, RFK Jr. has come out talking about the shooting epidemic. And here he is specifically talking about psychiatric drugs. And if the head of the HHS is talking about it, then maybe Sunil Dand's worst fears of 10 to 20 years may at least be sped up. Take a look.
I certainly consider mass shootings a health crisis. And we are doing, for the first time, real studies to find out what the etiology of that is. And we're looking for the first time at psychiatric drugs. You know, these kind of mass shooting, people have had guns in this country forever. When I was a kid, we had shooting clubs at our school. People, kids, my classmates, other people, would bring a .22 rifle with their guns to school and park it in the parking lot. Nobody was shooting. So there's never been a time in America, in the history of humanity, and people walked into a crowd, into a church or a movie theater or a school or a crowd of strangers and just started randomly shooting. It's happening in our country. It's not happening around the world. And there are many other countries that have comparable levels of guns that we have in this country. We had comparable levels in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and people weren't doing that. Something changed, and it dramatically changed human behavior. And one of the culprits we need to examine is whether the fact that we are the most over-medicated nation in the world, and that a lot of those are psychiatric drugs that have black box warnings on them that warn of suicidal and homicidal ideation. So we are doing those studies right now for the first time, and we will have an answer.
Meantime, RFK Jr. has also responded to the changes at the CDC, and they are certainly significant.
I'm not going to comment. It would be inappropriate for me to comment on a personnel issue. What I will say is, you know, President Trump has very, very ambitious hopes for CDC right now. The CDC has problems. You know, we saw the misinformation coming out of COVID. They got the testing wrong. They got the social distancing, the masks, the school closures that did so much harm to the American people. Today on CDC's website right now, they list the 10 top the 10 greatest advances in medical science, and one of them is abortion. Another is fluoridation, another is vaccines. So we need to look at the priorities of the agency. If there's really a deeply, deeply embedded, I would say, malaise at the agency. And we need strong leadership that will go in there and that will be able to execute on President Trump's broad ambitions.
Yeah,
to restore this agency to gold standard science and to what it was when we were growing up, which was the most respected health agency in the world.
So this is what the attorney said. When CDC Director Susan Menarez refused to rubber stamp unscientific, reckless directives and fire dedicated health experts, she chose to protecting the public over serving a political agenda. For that, she has been targeted. So she says you have a political agenda. Deborah Horry, the chief medical officer, has resigned. The infectious disease director, David Jennings, I think, has resigned as well. Is this something that's caught you by surprise? What's your reaction to people that are getting a little worried?
I think that, no, it has not caught us by surprise. Again, I cannot comment on personnel issues, but the agency is in trouble, and we need to fix it, and we are fixing it, and it may be that some people should not be working there anymore.
Yeah. Sir, can I ask?
Also in the United States now, and Karoline Leavitt has addressed the crime wave in Chicago, where there were about 6 murders last week, 20 shootings. But of course, outgoing Governor Pritzker, he's denying it all. Seems to be a Democrat fad.
As for Chicago and cracking down on crime, it is a priority of this administration to ensure that American cities are safe again. And I'm so glad that you brought up the crime in Chicago, because we've been seeing the governor of Illinois parading out there saying that there's nothing wrong with Chicago. It's a great place to live. There's no crime there. He doesn't need President Trump's help. Well, I think the residents of Chicago beg to differ, and the statistics beg to differ. And I'll just share a few of those statistics with all of you. For 13 consecutive years, Chicago has had the most murders of any U.S. city. This is J.B. Pritzker's legacy, by the way. For 7 consecutive years, Chicago has had the highest murder rate among U.S. cities with more than 1 million people. In 2024, just last year, Chicago's murder rate per capita was 3 times higher than Los Angeles and nearly 5 times higher than New York City. That's more than double the murder rate in Islamabad and nearly 15 times more than Delhi. Out of Chicago's 147,899 reported crimes this year, that's how many crimes have been reported in Chicago since January 1st. There have only been arrests in 16% of them. These numbers are unacceptable. There have been more illegal guns recovered in Chicago than in New York City and Los Angeles combined. The number of reported motor vehicle thefts last year was more than double the number in 2021. And Chicago has also, just like DC, come under scrutiny over discrepancies in its homicide data reporting. So as bad as these numbers are, perhaps they are even worse. And this is Governor Pritzker's legacy. He should put politics aside. He should pick up the phone and call this president, who would be more than happy to do right by law-abiding American residents in the city of Chicago, and we hope that he will.
Well, yesterday we reported that Donald Trump had posted that George Soros and his son should be charged under RICO for racketeering for their involvement in causing great damage to the United States. We now learn today that there has been a secret meeting with President Trump and Bill Gates for 3 hours this week. It was their second meeting since the election. Bill Gates has been cutting funding to left-wing groups that fund the NGOs causing chaos. Bill Gates was reportedly told he will be charged with RICO if he continues. And there's some articles there linking up to the story where he is directly cutting funding specifically to Arabella advisors as a hint that maybe, just maybe, Bill Gates has taken the warnings. We'll see. Not quite there at COVID yet, because Gates's involvement with vaccines could well be another way that he could pay a price. But it's interesting because the other great big story is, why are they going after all these people for mortgage fraud? It seems the same scenario yet again as the Al Capone Untouchables thing, the great criminal from the Prohibition era taken out for tax evasion, but one way or another. Meanwhile, we're also learning that Bob Katter has, well, he has responded in a way that only Bob Katter can. Deeply personal reason. He lost it over the Lebanese questions. Insiders opening up on the reason why Bob Katter blew up over questions surrounding his family's Lebanese heritage. And of course, Bob Katter yesterday in these scenes was saying, don't call me Lebanese, I've got no Lebanese blood, etc. It's really interesting, isn't it, that Bob Katter, as Australian as they can come, is being called out for perhaps having non-Australian origins, and here he is saying that you need to be more Australian in Australia. What's wrong with that? And why is it that we have this crazy scenario here in this country whereby Albo can bring in 1.8 million people during his first term in office? Why? Imagine this all is the left have to do. I posted on X last night. Import people who are worse off, not to help them, which they do, but at the expense of those born here and missing out though. But to maintain power indefinitely, to further lower standards, conditions, rights and privileges, appeasing those fleeing to bring with them the attitude of the place they flee. No wonder Bob Katter stands up for being an Australian first and foremost. If you choose to move to a new country, the idea is you want to become like them, not like what you are leaving. It makes absolutely no sense. More strength and power to Bob Katter as we work out what it is we want here for Australia as we head into the weekend and the August 31 rallies. It remains to be seen. I hope that what you got out of this week with all of the great interviews that you're able to see across Channel 51 and qcitizen.net from the future and from the past is able to put together great information for you across all fields as we focus not just on what's happening in Australia as we fight for our freedoms indefinitely, but also for the way that we're going to seek justice and accountability when it comes to health. And I hope to see you all next week with a brand new offer. This one, the $51 special, well, that will expire August 31st. And we'll have something special for you for next month as we head into spring and a whole new way of telling and looking at the news here in Australia and for us all around the world. Thanks everyone for watching and supporting me channel51.com.au and qcitizen.net. Have a great week.